Hey everybody, welcome back to Five Boys in a Business, a podcast where we talk about our business, the family, and the many shenanigans involved. You can catch us most Mondays between 10:30 and 11 and on any of the podcast channels, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Watch us live, like I said, on Facebook. Don't forget to check out our merch store at asvcmerch.com. And I'm Emily King.
And I'm Richie King. And today we have a very special guest with us, Nicole Clausen, the founder of Veterinary Care Logistics. Nicole has 14 years of veterinary medicine experience before she decided to open Veterinary Care Logistics. Veterinary Care Logistics is an inventory specialization consultancy. And Nicole is also the host of Inventory Nation. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So, Nicole, you've been in the industry for a number of years. What was it that prompted you to enter the industry in the first place?
So, funny story. So I got a job when I was 16. I was like, I'll just get a job and, it'll get me through. So I was like applying to all different industries, and I knew somebody who worked at the practice at the time. And so it was just a job I thought that would get me through high school and through college. But something about VetMed, once you're in it, it just like reels you in and you can't get out. So Here I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What were the various positions that you held on your way up, in veterinary medicine?
Yeah, so I have been I started as a CSR receptionist, and I kind of worked my way up from CSR to lead CSR, and then it was, then I made the jump to operations and then operations manager, and I just kind of started to fall in love with all these little different pieces of running a practice, and I love the operational aspect of and strategizing, hey, how can we make this better? How can we continuously improve? And I think that just really drove kind of the path that I led. But then I kind of always stayed a CSR because I love, even now to this day, I'm like, maybe I should go work as a receptionist for one day a week, just because I love it so much. And I love the clients, and having that relationship is just so meaningful to me.
That's awesome. What was it's funny you mentioned that constant kind of chase for greatness, because that's one of the things that we enjoy here is constantly learning and trying to do things better, because there is always a better way to do things sometimes. Even when you think you've reached the pinnacle, there's always that next step and that next phase. What did you find in your vast experience at VetMed some of the most enjoyable or challenging things?
That's a great question. So I think the most enjoyable for me is building the relationship with the family, and then, because I'd be at a clinic for 5, 6, 7 years, and it's I watch their kids grow up. I watch them get a puppy and their dog grow up, and you just really truly become an extension and a part of that family. And that, I've chills just even thinking about it. That is such an important aspect, I think. The hardest part for me is I'm the type of person, I'm a helper. I like to help. I want to help. And so when I can't help or I feel helpless, that is a really challenging place for me to be at. So when we'd see these cases of neglect or abuse or, just really not great situations, it was really challenging for me. I think that was definitely one of the more challenging aspects. And then a lot of times I think, so euthanasia, of course, it's kind of both sides of the coin for me, because I love the opportunity that we get to be there for our clients and our patients, and just the grace that comes with that appointment. But at the same time, it's a very challenging, more emotionally challenging appointment, and then when you have to go see a next appointment that's a super happy puppy, it's hard to make that transition and kind of maintain your mental health and be in a good space all at the same time.
So are you out of the clinic setting at this point now with what you're doing currently?
Yes. So I have been out of the clinic for almost 3 years now. So yeah, so I do on-site consulting, and so that kind of lets me see all the great aspects of it. Of course, with COVID, I haven't been in a practice in a while, but Yeah, so I just work from home now, right now.
Right, right, exactly. You like a lot of Americans. That's what's
Yes.
happening. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, what prompted you to start Veterinary Care Logistics?
So that was definitely an evolution again, for sure. So I remember, so my very, very first job managing inventory, I was brand new to the practice, brand new to managing inventory, and the gal was training me. And she goes, okay, so when you shake a bottle and it feels low, you order it. And
That's unscientific in the extreme, right?
right.
I love it. That's hilarious.
And like, I am a very quantitative person. Like, I
Right.
like to look at numbers. So I was like, I remember standing there in the pharmacy and I was like, but what does that mean?
Right.
And I was like trying to, so what does low mean? You know, and
Right.
like I couldn't get that answer.
Right.
And so from that, I just really learned everything that I could. I took everything I could from like human healthcare, managing inventory, everything I could learn from managing veterinary inventory. And I was having really great success with my system. And so I was helping other people locally. They were having really great success. And then it was actually a distributor representative that said, hey, you need to bring this to the world. And so that's what I did. And so it's just kind of been evolving and transforming ever since.
That's awesome.
That's very exciting.
So you mentioned that you go on site sometimes, but you do, I'm sure, a lot of distant communication consulting as well. What's a typical consulting experience like for clinics?
Sure. So what I do is I usually come on site, usually between 4 and 6 days, and we work nonstop. And so what I do is I figure out why their inventory went awry, like how the wheels came off the
Right.
bus. And then it's really about fixing it. So we sit down and go through every single inventory item. We make sure reorder points are set up. We make sure that quantity in hand is accurate. We do everything so that by the time that I leave, they have a complete inventory system that's set up and ready to go.
That's awesome. How can effectively managing inventory positively affect veterinary practices, maybe operationally or financially, or?
Yeah. So really, when you have non-inventory system, right, it's just like you're just reacting to what's low. It's just, there's not really a strategy behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It really affects all different aspects, right? If you think about it, you know, you're in the room with Mrs. Jones. She, you know, comes in for her yearly appointment. She wants to get these items, and you talk to her. You spend like 20 minutes talking about at-home care and preventative medicine and all this kind of stuff, and then you go to the back and you realize you're out of like half the things she wants.
Right.
It's like wind immediately just like comes out of the sails. So that's, of course, is like a huge frustrating friction piece for our team and our clients, really. But more on the financial aspect is, you know, inventory is the second largest expense in a veterinary practice. And so if you have high inventory costs, it quickly eats away at your profitability and really eats into, you know, our potential for so much expansion and growth and reinvesting in our team and equipment. And, you know, it just, the effects that it has truly extend in every part of a veterinary office.
And
so like with the
Go
with the practice and multiple doctor practices, do you counsel people in regards to, or like what are some of the techniques you might use when multiple doctors want multiple things, you know?
Yes.
You know, so there's a lot of duplicity amongst the doctors in terms of products when they're all doing the same thing, but they want their different versions of the freaking same thing.
Right.
And so, you know, what kind of advice do you give those types of practices when they're trying to manage those types of problems?
Yeah, so that is actually a really big problem. And it's kind of one of the number one reasons why I see these high cost of goods. You know, when we think of like all the different types for any potential situation, I always think about, go back to your why, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we here? We want to provide our patients with the gold standard level of care that we possibly could. And so when we think about it in that aspect, it's like, okay, we want to have maybe a primary, secondary, maybe even a third product on the shelf. But if we have all these different kinds of products, that means that maybe we can't invest in other areas, or if our cost of goods are high, maybe we can't get our equipment replaced and we have to have kind of like an older model, or all those different things. And so when you're looking at deciding, okay, I don't want to have all these products on the shelf, give that list of all the duplicate items to your veterinarians and say, hey, this one was last sold like 3 months ago.
Right.
This one we haven't sold since like 1989. Can we come to a consensus about what is the most beneficial products to have on our shelf? Is there one that's kind of like, maybe I could have this one? And then there's this one where like, this is a rock star. I'm going to reach for this product 98% of the time. That's the one we want to have on the shelf.
Got it. Yeah.
You mentioned that COGS can eat up a lot of your bottom line, and I think it's important. And I think you may have mentioned this on one of your podcasts that each percentage point above goal, about 20-ish or so percent, those are big numbers in larger clinics. About 1% of gross revenue. Have you had an experience with consulting where you walk into a clinic and you've been able to make a huge difference, and say it's 29%, and you get it? You say, "Wow, look at all the money that you save now by just having this efficient system in place."
Yes. I actually had a recent consulting client where she dropped her cost of goods by 9%.
Wow.
And saved over $200,000 a year.
Wow.
And we are just getting started when it comes to reducing her costs. So she still has some room there to drop that even lower. So I'm just really excited for her because it's so much potential. And she has really been working so hard at her inventory system, and I love the payoff that she's getting from that.
Right.
That's awesome. Those are big numbers.
Yeah. And
very big numbers.
I think people forget, which when we were prepping for this one presentation we're doing, and, Richie had mentioned, I think people forget that inventory is a portfolio. It's like an investment portfolio. And like they forget that you're trying to get a return on that financial investment. Right. And, you know what I mean? Like they don't see it that way. It's like, I don't know what it is that makes us as veterinarians not see that potential aspect, that it's like you're buying stock or you're buying something else. You're putting your money into this product and you're expecting a return on the product. And so, we don't have any of that knowledge. So we're just like, well, who cares? When I do sell it, I'm still making money. And we're just like, no, there's carrying cost and you're losing money. And I'm like, I don't understand. And, and so I think you're fighting this constant, not poor business knowledge, where people don't realize how much money they're flushing away. And so I think it could be a huge impact on practices, and, could improve the quality of life of the owner dramatically over time.
Oh, totally. I'm like, hey, let's fix your inventory so you can actually take home a paycheck. Let's do that. Like, that's what I want to help you with,
Right. Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
It's so funny too, because a lot of these things, they're systems that you put in place, you develop. I'm sure that you developed over the years, and especially those larger expenses. It's just the absence of a system that doesn't make it work, like shaking the bottle and saying, well, you order when it's low.
Right.
But if you put that system in place, it should probably, I would assume that your ideal situation is it runs like a machine, basically, that system.
Yes.
And that's so much more efficient. I'm sure the before and after stories that you have with the clients you've consulted with is probably night and day.
Yes, that I think is one of my favorite things, is watching the system in action, right? Because you go from this place where you're like, oh no, we just ran out, let's order a bunch, or let's shake the bottle and it feels low, let's order it. You're getting
Right.
panic texts on your day off. And then you put the system in place and it's like, on average, how much you're going to use in the next 2 weeks or the next month, so you've ordered that item, and it's like things really start moving like a machine. And so like my kind of motto, if you will, is like, let's put in an inventory system so you can kind of get back to what matters most, your patients, or, maybe it's leadership or whatever you're truly passionate about. Because I'm like, once we get the system going, there isn't a ton of, fixing and maintenance and upkeep to it. And it really just levels up the amount of efficiency that you have in your practice.
I think one thing you'll see veterinarians do is buying excessive products, so they don't have to think about it. So they'll buy, right? So they'll buy excessive product. And they're like, okay, great. I'm covered for 4 months now. I don't have to think about it. And meanwhile, that money is sitting tied up, because they are trying to do too many things. They're, trying to practice medicine. They're trying to manage or lead or, take care of their inventory. And so it's just like, all right, I'll just order so much that I can't run out,
Exactly. Exactly.
And so I know that can be a huge problem.
It really can. And it's so funny. I remember, so I was like, I was presenting at this conference, and this veterinarian came up to me and he's like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I help people manage their inventory and kind of help them get on the right track with that. And he goes, oh, why would you do that? I haven't made money in 25 years and I'm not looking to start now. Okay.
I'm not for you then.
Right.
It's like, I don't know where we go from there.
Oh, gosh.
And totally to your point, to think about, I always think about like conference season, and there's like all these conferences happen. There's all these great promotions. People are like, oh yeah, I want to try this product and I'm going to try that product and we're going to buy a bunch. And it's going to be so great. And then it gets forgotten about and never sold.
Yep.
Right.
What's your view on the online pharmacies as far as how clinics should be using them? Meaning like the veterinary pharmacies that you can set up in-house, those types of pharmacies.
Totally. I think that is a really great question and such a topic of discussion, especially right now. My viewpoint is that it's a really good resource for the products that you don't necessarily want to keep on the shelf, right? So it's kind of that one bottle that gets sold twice a year. I think an online pharmacy is a great resource for that. Do I think we should give our entire pharmacy away to online pharmacies? No, because, there's only so much services that we can provide, and there's almost like kind of a price cap to those services. And so if we're giving away our entire online pharmacy, we are missing that potential revenue. But it can work really well when you're thinking about it strategically. And it's a really great option for customer service, because in this day and age, like, everyone has an app. Even my grocery store down the road has an app in the middle of Montana. So, a lot of our clients are expecting that we have some type of convenient option. And if they want to use that and that's kind of their go-to thing, I think we should help meet them there.
That's awesome. It's interesting you mentioned earlier about buying a lot of stuff. I think we all fall prey to that. I know I've been taking over a lot of office supply ordering lately, and I had an experience where I kept getting cat litter on the order list, and then all of a sudden one of our people's like, please don't order any more cat litter. We have enough for 3 years. So even the best of us fall prey to that.
Totally.
What do you see challenges or disruptors that the industry might face in the coming years? In this time of flux, I mean, everything is changing. I know the world is certainly different today than it was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. So what do you see on the horizon?
Well, I think it's just change, really.
Right.
Veterinary medicine is a really hard, industry for change. And I think things are changing at such a rapid pace that we need to think strategically, again, about how we can adapt and how we can really, run our practices to the best of our abilities and hire or look to those who may be able to help us, right? That may have a different zone of genius. Veterinarians are amazing at practicing medicine. Like, that is their thing. But there's a lot of people out there where running businesses is their thing, or HR is their thing. So it's like, find those people where maybe you don't excel at and, lift everyone up in the process. I think another thing that's going to be really important is watching it look in telemedicine. So telemedicine is kind of coming down the pike, and I think that's going to have a lot of changes and possibilities and opportunities for our practices. Other things, of course, are outside online pharmacies, right? And how can we, remain competitive so we don't turn into like the Blockbuster of the world?
Yeah, you don't want to be Blockbuster.
No.
Sure.
No, you don't.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So we wanted to wrap up with something. We ask all of our guests this because I think it gives people a chance to reflect. And if you could go back and speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell them?
That is a really great question. And I think my answer would be like, just chill out. Like, be happy in the moment, you know, and
Right.
like find, like, you are going to find your passion, you know, like, you don't necessarily like have to rush into college or rush into anything, because it's all going to happen as it's supposed to
When
happen.
it's supposed to,
Right.
right?
Yes, and it just like
Absolutely.
really enjoying the moment, because I'm like, my life looks a little bit different now than it did when I was 20. And if I just like slowed down for a second, you know, and really appreciate where I was at, you know, I think that would have been helpful.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the industry definitely is changing. And what's comical to me is veterinarians are slow to change. So it's like button heads right now, you know? It's like, so anyway, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on our show. We sure appreciate it. I know that I mentioned to you earlier that I found you through your podcast, Inventory Nation, a wealth of information on there. So I encourage anybody listening to this to check it out. That inventory function is so very important. So yeah, that's something that needs to be managed closely and carefully. So thank you so much for coming on today. We sure appreciate that information you shared with us.
Yes, absolutely. It's my pleasure, truly.
Okay, everybody, that's Five Boys in a Business. We will see you next time at Monday, sometime between 10:30 and 11. Check us out on any of the podcast channels. And don't forget to check out the merch store at asvcmerch.com. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Thanks.